In this video, we'll take a look at section 9.1, which is on circles. Now, our first objective is finding the distance between 2 points. So in order to find the distance between 2 points, we have something called the distance formula. And this states the distance between 2 points, x sub 1 and y sub 1, and x sub 2, y sub 2, is given by d is equal to the square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. Let's draw a diagram and take a look at how we arrive at this distance formula. Okay, so let's say we have these 2 points. I'm going to label my first point x sub 1, y sub 1, and my second point x sub 2, y sub 2. Okay, so we're trying to figure out the distance between these 2 points. So if we could see, we could draw a right triangle over here. Now on the bottom side of the triangle, the leg, I can find the distance here by subtracting my x-coordinates. So this would be x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And for my other leg, this would be y sub 2 minus y sub 1. So notice, we're really trying to find out what the hypotenuse of this triangle is. Okay, so I'm going to label my hypotenuse as d. So now we have a right triangle. And recall, whenever we have a right triangle, we have the Pythagorean theorem. Okay? The Pythagorean theorem holds for any right triangle. And the Pythagorean theorem states one leg squared plus the other leg squared is equal to the hypotenuse squared. Okay? So I would have my bottom leg, which is x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared, plus then my other leg, which is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared, is equal to d squared, the hypotenuse squared. Well, if I go ahead and solve for d, I have to get rid of that second power. So I'll go ahead and take the square root of both sides. Taking the square root of both sides. This gives me my distance formula. And that's how we arrive at our distance formula. So now let's go ahead and take a look at some examples. So first one, find the distance between 2, 6 and negative 4, negative 2. So what is the distance between these 2 points? Okay, well, let's go ahead and plug it into our distance formula. So we have d is equal to, we have the square root of, so we have x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So x sub 2 is negative 4, and then I have minus x sub 1, which is 2. I have squared, plus, and now I have y sub 2 minus y sub 1. So my y sub 2 is negative 2, and I have minus my y sub 1, which is 6, and raise that to the second power. Now let's go ahead and simplify. So I have the square root of, so negative 4 minus 2, that gives me negative 6, and then raise to the second power, plus negative 2 minus 6, again negative 8, and then raise that to the second power. Okay, now let's raise each one of these to the second power. So negative 6 squared gives me 36, plus, and then negative 8 squared gives me 64. So this gives me the square root of 100. Square root of 100 gives me 10. So the distance between these 2 points is 10. Let's take a look at another one. So find the distance between negative 2, 1 and 4, 2. We have distance is equal to, we have the square root of, so x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared, so we have 4 minus, and then negative 2 squared. I have plus, and then I have y sub 2 minus y sub 1, so I have 2 minus 1 squared. Now let's go ahead and begin to simplify. So I have square root of, so 4 minus negative 2. Remember that minus minus becomes plus. So I really have 6 raised to the second power. And I have plus. Now 2 minus 1 gives me 1. So I have 1 raised to the second power. So this gives me square root of 36 plus 1, which gives me the square root of 37. Now square root of 37, I cannot simplify that, so that would be my final answer. So the distance is the square root of 37. Okay, so this leads us to our next objective, which is finding the midpoint of a segment. And for this, we have another formula. It's called the midpoint formula. And it states, if the endpoints of a segment are x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, y sub 2, then the coordinates of the midpoint are x sub 1 plus x sub 2 divided by 2, and then y sub 1 plus y sub 2 divided by 2. Okay. So what we're trying to find here, just so we have a general idea, so we have 2 points. Okay, I'm going to label my first point x sub 1, y sub 1, and then my second point x sub 2, y sub 2. So these are the endpoints of this line segment. I'm trying to figure out what this middle point is. What's the point in the middle of those 2 points? In order to do that, we have our midpoint formula. Okay, so first example, find the midpoint of the segment with the given endpoints. Okay. So we have x sub 1 plus x sub 2, so I have negative 3 plus 6, and I'm going to divide that by 2. And then I have to add my y coordinates, so I have y sub 1 plus y sub 2. And I go ahead and divide that by 2. Now simplify. So negative 3 plus 6 gives me 3, so I have 3 over 2. And then my y coordinate, 1 plus negative 7, this gives me negative 6, and I have over 2. Simplifying a little bit more, so we get 3 over 2, comma, and then negative 6 divided by 2 gives me negative 3. And now I found the midpoint of that line segment with the given endpoints. Let's try another one. Okay, so same thing. So add your x coordinates, so I have 10 plus 8, and then divide that by 2. And then my y coordinates do the same thing, so I have negative 7 plus negative 3, and then I divide that by 2. And now simplify. So 10 plus 8 gives me 18, and I've divided by 2. Negative 7 plus negative 3 gives me negative 10, and then divided by 2. So simplifying, we get 9 comma negative 5. Okay, so now this leads us to our next objective, which is circles. Now, equations of circles. A circle with center hk and radius r has the form x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equal to r squared. So let's go ahead, let's draw a circle so we can see these properties. Okay, so we're going to have the center of our circle. This has the coordinates h comma k, so it's whatever makes this x part 0, and then whatever makes the y part 0. That's going to give you the coordinates for your circle. And then our radius. So the radius is the distance from the center to the edge of the circle. This is our r. Let's take a look at an example. So find the center and the radius of the circle, and then graph the circle. Okay, so we have the equation x minus 5 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 9. So right away we could read off what our center is. So our center, whatever makes the part in parentheses for the x 0, which would be 5. And then whatever makes the part of the y that's being squared, whatever makes that part 0 in the parentheses, so it would be negative 1. So our center is 5 comma negative 1, and then our radius, it's the square root of this last number. It's the square root of 9. Well, square root of 9 is 3. So now let's go ahead and plot the center, and then we'll use the radius to find additional points for our circle. So we have 5 comma negative 1, which is this point right over here. This is our center. Now we use the radius to find additional points. So using the radius, you're going to go 3 units in each direction from the center. So I'm going to go 3 units to the right, which gives me this point, 3 units to the left, which gives me this point, 3 units down, which puts me over here, and then go 3 units up, which is this point. Now I have to connect these points with the circle. And now we have our graph. Let's take a look at the next one. So same type of problem, find the center and the radius, and then graph the circle. So we have x squared plus y squared is equal to 64. Okay. Well, I could rewrite this equation so it has the form, this is really x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared equal to 64. So now it's in that familiar form that we saw earlier. So I could tell that my center is 0, 0, and then my radius, square root of 64, which is 8. Now we have all the information that we need to graph the circle. So start with the origin, that's our center, 0, 0, and then we're going to go 8 units in each direction. So 8 units to the right, 8 units to the left, 8 units down, and then 8 units up. And now let's connect these with the circle shape. Now we have our graph. Next problem, finding the equation of a circle with center -3, 1 and radius 6. Okay, so this time we're given the center and we're given the radius. What we want to do is figure out what the equation of the circle is. So let's follow the standard form, which is x minus h squared plus, and then we have y minus k squared is equal to r squared. And now let's plug in our values. So I have x minus, and now my h, which is -3. I have squared plus, and then I have y minus, and then my k, which is 1. Squared is equal to, and then my radius, which is 6, and I have to raise that to the second power as well. So now simplifying, I get x plus 3 squared plus y minus 1 squared is equal to 36. So for this part of our equation, the minus became plus. So that's why I have x plus 3 and then raised to the second power. Okay. So now our next example, find the center and the radius of the circle and then graph the circle. So now this time, it's not in our standard form. It's not of the form x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equal to r squared. Okay, so I can't read off what the center is and what the radius is. Now, in order to find out what the center and radius are, I have to get it into this form first. So for my equation, we have x squared plus 2x plus y squared minus 4y plus 2 is equal to 0. So now to get it into this form, first, you want your x's and y's on the same side of the equation, and then move the constant to the other side. So we're going to go ahead and subtract 2 from both sides. So I get x squared plus 2x plus y squared minus 4y is equal to -2. Now we have to complete the square for our x's and for our y's. So completing the square for our x's, I'm going to group my x terms together first. So I have x squared plus 2x. And then I'm going to group my y terms, y squared minus 4y. Okay. And now I'm going to complete the square for each one. So to complete the square for my x's, I take half of the coefficient of x and then square it. So half of 2 is 1. 1 squared gives me 1. So I have to add 1 to both sides of the equation. So I have x squared plus 2x plus 1. And then if I complete the square for my y's, I take half of the coefficient of y. So half of 4 is 2. And then 2 raised to the second power gives me 4. So I have to add 4 to both sides of my equation. So we have -2. And then what did we add on the left-hand side? We added a 1, and then we also added a 4. Now the whole purpose for completing the square is because now I could factor this into a perfect square trinomial. So x squared plus 2x plus 1, this factors into x plus 1 squared. And then for my y's, this factors into y minus 2 squared. And then I have equal to, okay, negative 2 plus 1, which is negative 1, and then plus 4, which gives me 3. So now I can read off my center and then my radius. Okay, so my center here is negative 1 comma 2, and then my radius is the square root of that number on the right hand side, so it's the square root of 3. Okay. And now we have to go ahead and graph. So start with the center, which is negative 1, 2. So negative 1, 2 is negative 1, 2 is this point right over here. And now we have to go square root of 3 units in each direction. Okay. Well, square root of 3, we have to approximate where that's going to be. So square root of 3 is approximately about 1.7. So we're going to go 1.7 in each direction. So going 1.7 to the right, I get about this point right over here. And then 1.7 to the left is about this point. 1.7 down, which is about right here. And then 1.7 up, which is about right over here. And now we have our circle. So square root of 3, this is approximately 1.7. So I went 1.7 in each direction. Okay. One last problem. So find the center and the radius of the circle and then graph it. Okay, so we have the equation x squared plus y squared minus 8x plus 2y is equal plus 2y plus 13 is equal to 0. Okay, so first let's go ahead and subtract 13 from both sides. And now also with the same step, I'm going to group my x's and group my y's together. So I have x squared minus 8x. And I have plus y squared plus 2y is equal to negative 13. And now we complete the square. So completing the square for my x's, I take half of 8. So I'm taking half of 8, which is 4. And then I raise 4 to the second power. So 4 raised to the second power gives me 16. So I have to add 16 to both sides. Now for our y's, I have to take half of 2, which is 1, and then 1 squared, which gives me 1. So I have this is equal to negative 13. And then whatever we added on the left-hand side, we have to add to the right-hand side. So I added a 16, I also added 1. So now this will put this in the form that we wanted in. So factoring the x's, this gives me x minus 4 squared. And I have plus, and then my y's, this gives me y plus 1 squared. And then I have equal to negative 13 plus 16 is positive 3. Positive 3 plus 1 gives me 4. So now my center is 4 comma negative 1. And then my radius, square root of 4, which is 2. So now let's go ahead and graph it. So we have our center, which is 4, negative 1. And then my radius is telling me to go 2 units in each direction. And now we can connect them with each other. Alright, so that was it for section 9.1. If you have any questions at all, please email me and I'll help you out.